name is Mistress Philomena and I hail from the fair kingdom of Trimaris. Today I'm going to be teaching you on how to make Tudor soap balls, and this is a recipe that I found in a book by Sir Hugh Platt. And excuse me while I read the name, it is a very long name. It is Sir Hugh Platt's book, Delights for Ladies to Adorn Their Persons, Tables, Closets, and Distilleries with Beauties, Bouquets, Perfumes, and Water. It was printed in 1609. These are a great thing to make for largesse. They are a great kids class as well. I like to call it when I teach this class that it is a fun way to get dirty while getting clean. And so with that, I'm going to get started. What we're going to be using today, I'll go over a few of the ingredients first and then we'll get into making them. So what we're using to make these soap balls is what is called castille soap. And this came about the 13th century, actually a little bit earlier, but it really became into its heyday around the 13th century. I brought a couple of different kinds of castille soap to show you, including the one that I particularly like to use. These are all, castille soap is soap that is made from olive oil and salt, and it is basically turned into soap because they saponify the oils through the use of a little bit of lye. So I brought you a couple of different examples so that you can see the soap and what it looks like. This one is from Turkey. It is a very softer castille soap. I keep it wrapped in plastic. The amount of time that it is allowed to cure and dry will affect the overall feel of it. So this is a very kind of soft, not wet, but just a little soft, almost I would say moist soap. It has a very kind of fresh smell, a little bit of oil, but definitely a little bit of a scent to it. This is the soap that I use. It is from Palestine. It is a Nablus or Nablus soap. It again is made with just olive oil, a little bit of lye, and salt. This is basic for me. This is basically the closest you can get to a period soap. They make this soap using the same recipe that they have made from the 11th century. So it is a great soap to use. You can find it on Amazon. If you have an ethnic store in your area, sometimes they carry it, but it's definitely you can find it on Amazon. It can be a little expensive. I think on Amazon they run around $4 to $6 a bar. But I can usually find it locally for about half of that price. This is what the wrapper looks like, if you want to see that. Again, it is called a Nablus or Nablus soap, and it is from Palestine. It is great soap. It is very, very hard, much harder than the soap. So I really like to use this one for my soap balls. This is a modern castille soap. They use the olive oil, and it still has a little bit of the pulp from the olive in it, so they're basically using the whole olive. That is why it is green. It is still castille soap, but you'll see this is a creamy white and this is a green. They're sort of using an unrefined olive oil, so that's why you get this green color. This tends to have a little more stronger smell to it. I find it a little off-putting, so I don't tend to use this one. Now this is a castille soap as well. Technically, it is actually a Bastille soap because this is made using palm oil and coconut oil as well as olive oil. So typically a castille soap can only be called a castille soap if it just uses olive oil. If you add any other kind of oil to it, it becomes a Bastille soap. This is very cheap. You can find this online through Walmart or Amazon. I use this soap for when we make our laundry soap balls, because it's really cheap and easy, and I'd rather use this for a laundry soap ball than my nice fancy $6 bar of soap that we're going to use for faces and hand and body. So what you want to do, and I'll move these out of the way, what you want to do with your soap so that you're able to make a soap ball out of it is you want to grate it. That makes it easier to work with, and that's what I have here in this bowl. To grate it, it's very easy. You're just going to take a box grater or any kind of hand grater. This one works great because you can sort of hold it and shred it on this, grate it on this. I tend to use, I don't know how long when this shows up, I tend to use the side with the smaller shreds. I don't like the front face with the large holes because you're really wanting to emulsify this soap and sort of dissolve it in a little bit of water and make it malleable into like a clay almost. So this side is too big. I also don't like to use the sides that are that you see people using them for zesting or for grating citrus or something like that. The soap just gets stuck in here, and you spend more time trying to clean it out of these little pointy holes than you're actually getting usable soap out of. So for me, if you're using a box grater, I like the side with the tiny little, that gives you the tiny little shreds. And all you're going to do is take your soap in your hand, and you're just going to run it down the side of the box grater, and it's going to give you tiny little curly cues, which is great, which is exactly what you want. And then all you need to do is, I like to break up the curly cues a little more, and so when I have my soap that I'm grating, I will take my hand and just sort of crumble these shreds a little bit, because you're really going to be dissolving these in water anyway. So once you have all of your soap grated, whichever kinds you want to use, like I said, today we're going to be making soap balls that you could use in a lady's boudoir. These are for use on your face, your hand, your body, and so we're going to use some botanicals. This is a great use of dried flowers, dried herbs. You could use some essential oils if you want. I have some of those here. I started off using the essential oils and have sort of moved away from those. And the reason is, even though this soap doesn't have any fragrance added to it, the very nature of the process of making the soap and the fact that it uses olive oil, it has a scent all of its own. And so the fragrance oils really have a hard time overcoming that. And so you kind of lose that fragrance. So I tend to use botanicals then, which have a little stronger smell. Today we're going to be using lavender. You could use citrus peels in here. That would be lovely. I like citrus scents. I have used dried mint. Dried mint is nice. Dried rose petals are nice. You can use those. But today we're going to use lavender. So I have a jar of lavender. So all you're going to do is, you want to break up the buds. They're already kind of finely crushed a little bit. Some of these are whole, but you really want to break them up to a finer texture so that they mix in well. So I just take a little bit. You don't need a lot. We're going to make a small amount of soap balls today, so I really don't need a giant amount of those. I think that will do me fine. Pinch for good luck. And all you're going to do is take your pestle, mortar and pestle, and you're just going to kind of break it up. And this works really good for the lavender because it starts to release a little bit of the scent, and it becomes really nice and fragrant. So we just take, you don't want to grind it up so that it turns into powder and you can't quite tell what it is. You just want to break them up a little bit so that they mix in. And that looks pretty good to me there. So then all we do is we take a little bit of our soap. If you were to teach this in a class, and I have taught this in a class many times, about a third of a cup is good for people. You tend to get about 3 soap balls out of that. So you just put a little bit in your bowl, and you take some water. You could use rose water. That's really nice if you're making a rose petal soap. You moisten the soap with a little bit of rose water. I like to do orange flower water if you're doing an orange soap. That's a really nice combination as well. So you take your soap. We're going to add in our crushed lavender. Mix that up a little bit. And then all you're going to do is add a little bit of water at a time. You don't want to, it's very hard to take out water. I mean, I have a bunch of soap, so if I were to over add a little water, I could just add some more soap. But you want to start with a little bit of water. And we're just going to drizzle in a little water. Probably that's good for right there. And you're just going to mix it up. And that's probably going to be all the water that I need for the soap balls. You're just going to mix it with your hands. Nope, I might need a little bit more. What you're looking for is kind of a soft, I want to say almost Play-Doh texture, maybe a little softer than that. You want to be able to roll it into a ball and have it stick together, but you don't want it to be, excuse me, lavender got up my nose. You don't want it to be so wet that it is just goopy and runny. So you see, runaway soap, just from that little bit of water that we added, we're already kind of getting a nice texture here. I still have a little bit of soap here in the bowl. It's a good idea if you do this class and you teach kids how to make soap balls or people how to make soap balls, put a little plastic down because it does tend to kind of go everywhere. So I can see now, just based on how much soap I have left in the bowl, I probably do need a little more water. What helps with the soap is the malleable, getting it malleable, is the heat of your hands will help kind of soften that soap up as you work in the water. So I'm going to add just a couple of more drops. I don't need much. We're almost there. That should be good. We'll try that. And so I like to work this almost like a bread dough, or even, gosh, if you're working clay, you really just want kind of a nice texture. I will use my soap ball to gather up all the little bits here in my bowl. And then what I'll do is I like to just sort of work it in my hand, knead the soap in my hand until it kind of gets a nice smooth texture. And again, that's why I said the heat of your hands really helps with that. Pardon the mess on the table here. And so you just kind of smush it back and forth in your hands. You see, it's not very wet. I'm not getting a lot stuck on my hands here because it's sticking more to itself, but it's becoming very pliable. So I say it's a little moister, a little damper than Play-Doh, but it has that same kind of nice malleability to it where it really just, you see as I'm working it back and forth, it's really just nice and soft. I can sort of squish down on it and it's not crumbling apart, but it's also not squishing. It's so wet that it's just squishing through my fingers or anything. It's really just kind of like a clay, like a Play-Doh. And I like to just work mine back and forth here using the heat of my hands, as I said, to make it nice and soft. You want the soap to kind of melt a little bit and then just all come together. You totally could, if you wanted to, massage this on it, or massage it on a table. I like my hands because they said that the heat of your hands really helps with that. So this is actually pretty good right now. So for about, this is probably about 2/3 of a cup, we have soap this size. And I like to break this up into smaller, about ping pong ball sized soap balls. So we'll probably get 3 out of this amount of soap. And really all you're going to do is just break sections off. You're going to roll it in your hand until you get a nice ball shape. And there you go, a soap ball. Now these do need to dry, but they dry fairly quickly. They don't need, since it's already soap and you're really just kind of repurposing soap, they don't need any long cure time. So really you're just going to shape them into your balls and then you'll let them usually overnight. At most you might need 2 days if you made your soap a little wet. You might need 2 days to let them dry, but by the next day they should have hardened back up nicely and be ready to use. These are a couple that I made earlier this year for largesse for Gulf Wars. And you can see they turn, I think these were mint and rose. So they'll discolor a little bit from this white color, but that's only because of the botanicals inside as they sort of settle in. And the soap itself you saw was kind of a golden color anyway. So they'll darken a little bit, but these are a really nice largesse item, very easy to make for people to give away. They smell great. You keep them in your bag, and they're like I said, they're a really nice gift. So I hope you try some. I will include a link and an email address with this video. I do have a handout. I teach this class quite often. If you'd like to learn more about how to do these, I have recipes as well for an exfoliating soap using honey and seeds, as well as the recipe for my laundry soap. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and please let me know. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.